Hello, friends, and welcome back to the GenX Network, where today I have a very special guest, Gene Key Master Guide, Mr. Justin Yip. Justin, welcome to the GenX Network. I'm so excited to have you today.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am really excited about this conversation, Justin, because I have been a personal development junkie for almost 30 years. And I've done a ton of reading and research and personality tests and this coach and that coach. And it was when I met you and you shared with me about the gene keys and my personal chart, my shadow, my gift, that everything over the last 30 years really just clicked for me. And that one click really allowed me to level up in every way possible. And so, what I'd like to do is, I'd like for you to share what the gene keys are and how you guide your students on their journey of transformation. And then maybe we can dive into this shadow and what my shadow was. And I'll share some stories of how that insight has really allowed me when normally I would spiral to just break through. So I'm going to hand it over to you today.
Yeah. So the gene keys are an amazing wisdom system that reveal your purpose, your life challenges and life struggles, also the breakthroughs that can happen from your struggles and challenges, and also your higher abilities, your gifts, your genius, your superpowers that emerge when you begin to integrate and shift these shadows into the gifts. Because one aspect of the wisdom of the gene keys is that every shadow contains a gift. So every suffering contains the seed of salvation. Every victim pattern contains the pathway for the superhero. And in many ways, we are often the victimizers of ourselves, and we are also our own saviors. So the gene keys are an evolution of human design for those of you out there who may be familiar with that. And I consider the gene keys to be, um, well, a profound spiritual, more integrated and more holistic evolution of human design. So, to say a little bit about how it works, it is based on astrology, chakras, the I Ching, the Kabbalah. It is a synthesis of a lot of amazing traditions and systems. And it's based on one piece of information for any individual. And that piece of information is your date of birth, your location of birth, and your time of birth. So a lot of people that I introduce the gene keys to ask, how can that possibly be true? How can this one piece of information related to my birth reveal so much about my purpose, my struggles, my breakthroughs, my abilities? And the answer to that is that if you believe in the system, if you believe in astrology and the workings of the universe, like Violet and I have come to understand, it's that based on, again, time of birth, location of birth, date of birth, there's this universal energetic imprinting on who you are, on your DNA, on your genetics, on your soul. That is your soul blueprint. And that imprinting is based on the location of the stars and the planets and the universe and the energies of the galaxy. And it sounds out there, it sounds like science fiction, but the more I voyage through the gene keys myself as a guide, and the more I share the gene keys with others, and it reveals superpowers, abilities, identity, purpose. I just believe it's undeniably true.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit about how the gene key system works.
Wow. And, that's exactly how I felt when you shared it with me. Not only did you bring insights into my shadow and help me understand the gift. And my shadow was confusion. And it sort of put together, what the last 30 years have been and why I had this history of going full speed ahead and then crashing and burning. And each time it was because I would not have all the answers. And that lack of clarity, right? Can you hear me, Justin? Is my internet
Yeah,
is still a little not good. I've got
I can
everyone
hear
in my
you.
family off internet. I got everyone off, so we're trying. But not only did that make sense to me, and now when I feel confused, I know the pathway out. But you also almost gave me permission to lean into my superpower, lean into my gift, and be able to show up in a much bigger way, knowing my truth and not questioning it. Because I believe that so many of us play small for, the majority of our lives. Not everyone, but a lot of us. And I think this is that pathway forward. Abraham Maslow explained that self-study was the highest form of study, right?
Yeah.
And that's what this does, is it allows us to look so much deeper into who we are, and the golden P word, purpose, right? Like our purpose, living on purpose. And I believe that when we do that, there's such, deep fulfillment that I didn't have, because my whole life I thought that it was about the money, right? Like that's what I chased. Like, oh, if I just made 100. Well, I made 100 and didn't feel any different. Oh, if I just made 200. Oh, if I just made 300. And once I started working with you and I really started leaning into that gift and living on purpose, I felt fulfillment like in a way I've never felt in my life. And so, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So the gene keys are actually more than a system that reveal your purpose through a series of numbers and shapes. And it's based on, again, your gene keys profile, which you can get and is what I use as the map to guide individuals through. But what I mean to say is that the gene keys in some way is a wisdom philosophy.
Mm,
And what the system of the gene keys does is it helps you apply that wisdom philosophy to a practical pathway, a practical map of your hero's journey to embody and integrate and wield and be empowered by your purpose. So I say that because some of the philosophy and wisdom of the gene keys approach is that your struggles are experiences that you're meant to have so that you can relax into your purpose, so that you can relax into who you're meant to be. And what's very relieving is that your struggles and your shadow patterns may actually be all part of one frequency.
mm,
So, for example, and I know that this is part of your profile and part of one of your keys. There's this shadow of hunger. There's this low frequency pattern of hunger where you're just never quite satisfied. You're never quite satiated. No matter what you do in life, you just want more.
yeah,
And it's this outer craving, it's this outer hunger because the inner fulfillment isn't quite there.
right.
So people may think like you're like, yeah, because that's one of my keys, and it is one of your keys. So people might think like, what is this experience? What is this pattern that I feel? What good can come from that? And the higher frequency from this low frequency of hunger from the wisdom and philosophy of the gene keys would actually be adventure. So from this insatiable desire for more stimulation or for just keeping busy is this gift of adventure, or this gift frequency, this higher frequency of adventure. And adventure is not really about the destination. It's not really about new scenery. It's not about new destinations. It's about following your heart. It's about the adventure of the heart. You're doing and you're being compelled to engage in what your heart calls for.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing this with you through the lens of one of the gene keys, and this in particular is gene key 35. But again, the wisdom and the philosophy of the gene keys is that whatever shadow pattern, whatever victim pattern, whatever struggle, whatever challenge you're experiencing, there is a higher frequency, there is a breakthrough, there is a revelation, there is a superpower and ability just waiting for you to discover. And when you apply that philosophy and that wisdom to any experience in life, well, it instantly gives meaning to the struggle. The struggle becomes something of a mystery, something of a contemplation that you're trying to figure out, rather than just being engaged and enmeshed and entangled in the heaviness of that struggle. So again, as a Gene Keys guide, I feel that in a lot of ways, I'm more than a Gene Keys guide. I'm looking to share this wisdom and this philosophy with people through what I call the Gene Keys approach.
And it's so interesting that you said adventure, because first of all, I love adventure. If you ask my husband, I'm
Yeah,
always like, let's go on an adventure. But
yeah,
I had tremendous performance anxiety growing up for various reasons. And I would literally just destruct, like I would destroy opportunities because of that performance anxiety. And one of the ways before I even met you that I got around it is I started to look at it as an adventure. Like, oh, it's not scary. Like, I'm going on an adventure, and that allowed me to get out of the mental space of, I got to figure it out all out, and into something that drives me, which I love adventure. I love going to new lands and new countries. And to your point, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? And so it's so interesting, because also one of the things you and I talk about is my gift, and that being in my imagination, which then leads to illumination. And
hmm
my whole framework that I've spent 20 years building is imagination, and the word that's been
hmm
calling me for years is illumination, and I didn't know why. And so I feel like there's signs of these things in our life. Like I feel like if I look back, what held me back was confusion, not having all the answers and feeling like I'm never going to have the answers. What got me out was my imagination. So will you talk about that a little bit? Will you talk about how there are these signs in our life of our gift and our shadow, if we just
yeah,
look back, right?
yeah, yeah. So the word that comes to mind is synchronicity,
Mm.
and almost everyone who experiences the gene keys and begins to voyage through the gene keys experiences more synchronicity. And I understand synchronicity, and I say I understand, but a lot of us colleagues, those who get it, who feel the higher calling, who feel the awakening to their own inner alignment, they mention this dynamic of synchronicity. And it's when a word, when something that you named a program or an offer or something as part of your business is then there as one of your prominent gene keys. The gift of that, the city of that is part of your gene key. So I'll share an interesting story about synchronicity. So there are 64 gene keys, and the gene keys are based on the I Ching. And the I Ching, there are 64 changes because the I Ching is the book of changes. So the I Ching is ancient. It's thousands of years old. And the I Ching was originally created to help leaders and democrats and rulers more effectively govern their nations and their cities. So what's fascinating is that from the I Ching system, from these 64 changes or these 64 lessons, there is the genetic mapping of 64 keys that are correlating to the I Ching to our genetic DNA. So, in addition to that, there was Carl Jung. And if you're into shadows, if you're into integration, if you're into archetypes, you're going to know Carl Jung. Carl Jung experienced the I Ching, and he began to experience this uncanny experience of events that were too coincidental to be coincidental. So Carl Jung came up with the word synchronicity to explain this dynamic of experiencing the I Ching and not knowing how these experiences in his life were just too too good to be true. So now when people voyage through the gene keys, they mention the same dynamic of synchronicity that Carl Jung came up with the word for when he was contemplating the I Ching that the 64 gene keys are based on. So, hey, if you're looking for purpose, if you're looking to experience more synchronicity in life, if you're looking more for more alignment with like your true calling, the gene keys is where it's at. There's tremendous benefit and wisdom to be had.
Yeah. And, I have felt that so strongly. Even just the last few days, I'm working on a project and having major technology challenges, and I could feel myself so triggered because it's confusing and it's like, when is it going to come together? And what am I doing wrong? And, that knowing that that's a trigger for me, that confusion sends me
Yeah.
into that spiral has been so enlightening. But also being able to go like, okay, like use my imagination. What does it look like, on the other side of it? Or what does it look like if by Friday this all comes together at the perfect timing? And, so I feel like my transformation has really, even though I've been on a healing journey for 10 years, this was kind of like
Yeah.
the icing on the cake, right? Like the final things that I needed to know to step into my power, really. And so, will you share like some of the transformations you've seen when someone understands? Because you work with a lot of CEOs, a lot of executives, a lot of high level people that are, find themselves where maybe I found myself. Okay, so I have all the things society said would make me happy. I have the money, I have the title, I have the letters behind my name, but I don't have an ounce of fulfillment. Right.
Yeah.
And so many high level leaders have that same problem. There might be successful on the outside, but there's a deep ache on the inside. And so, will you talk about some of the transformation that is possible that you've seen just by having this awareness?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even just starting to voyage through the gene keys, even just after one guided session with an individual, I hear this language of, I feel so seen. I feel that my life experiences are so validated. I feel so validated as a person. I feel so much less guilt and shame about the things that used to feel so heavy in my life. I feel so certain about my purpose, my gifts, and my abilities. One of my favorite is that I feel so much more fearless. I know what I'm meant to do, and I know I have the abilities and the superpowers to go after it. So I'm just going to go after it.
Yeah.
And these feelings and these sentiments only become greater and more profound as you continue to voyage through the gene keys, because the gene keys that appear in your profile, well, there are 11 spheres. There are 11 keys that are prominent in your profile, which means there are 11 shadow patterns. There are 11 gifts, 11 superpowers. But as a Gene Keys guide, I've been voyaging through this for 3 years now. So it's not something that's a one and done. It's not something that you just learn a little bit about and then leave behind, because it's not information. It's wisdom. And more than wisdom, it's an inner wisdom where the more time you spend with the Gene Keys, which is also spending more time relaxing into your own unique being, the more empowered you feel, the more of your purpose you live. The less time you spend in your shadow patterns, because you've learned to relax into who you're meant to be, and you've learned to integrate and shift, and you get better at integrating and shifting. You do it at the drop of a hat, the snap of a finger, because you have the language and awareness finally of what are often subconscious patterns. So words that come to mind are fulfillment, or just
Mm.
relaxedness, or just feeling more like yourself than you've ever felt in your life. And what you mentioned with a lot of CEOs and a lot of busy entrepreneurs, a lot of success oriented individuals, is this sense of outer fulfillment.
Yeah.
So what the Gene Keys does, and again, the wisdom, the philosophy, and the voyage of going through the Gene Keys is that it allows this inner fulfillment to unfold, which then makes the outer fulfillment even more enjoyable. So those are some things that I've experienced and some things that I've heard others say as well.
And I love how you said relax into it. That you and I have talked many times and you've never said that. But that is exactly, I'm all about nervous system dysregulation, regulation. And when we're in our shadow and we don't have an awareness to it, I believe it triggers us into survival mode. And that's what happened to me is I would go into survival mode. And the way out of survival mode is activating the parasympathetic, regulating the nervous system, which happens by activating the relaxation response, right? So that's exactly the shift from survival mode, like, oh my God, I'm confused. It's never going to make sense. I can't do it. Forget it. I'm not going to do it, to just, you know what? I'm just going to be easy about this. I know there's an opportunity here. I know there's a gift here. I know I'm going to figure it out when I need to figure it out, and so that relaxing into it, moving, that's how we break free of the shadow. Why do you think so many people get stuck with the shadow?
Can you say that again?
Why do you think so many people get stuck like in the shadow?
Yeah, why do so many people get stuck in the shadow? That's a good question, and I have a really good answer. It's because that most shadows and most shadow patterns are subconscious behaviors. They're subconscious patterns. They are behaviors and habits that we often began to engage in early in our lives when we were children. And because of that, they're almost like default patterns. We go to these for safety, security. And what's fascinating is that with each shadow, there is a repressive aspect to a shadow, and there is a repressive aspect to a shadow. So some shadows lead to overreactive behavior, and some shadows lead to repressive behavior. And even this is subconscious. And when you read about a shadow, when you encounter a shadow, when you contemplate a shadow, you know right away if it's one of your shadows, and you know right away if it's the reactive version or the repressive version. So I often hear with a lot of clients and a lot of individuals that I guide through the gene keys that initially they feel quite vulnerable because all of a sudden there is this subconscious pattern which for the first time in their lives has been brought up to their conscious awareness, and it can be very uncomfortable, which is why it is so important to stay relaxed, to stay calm, and why it can also be very beneficial to voyage with a guide. Because again, is it easy to identify, shift, and integrate these subconscious patterns on our own? It's not. We've been trying to realize these for all our lives. And on our own, there may be some insight and there may be benefit, but to have that space and also to have this dynamic of co-regulation, of someone reminding you to stay relaxed, of someone reminding you to stay grounded as you experience the voyage of integrating and shifting these shadows into these gift frequencies and these gift states, it can be very practical and very beneficial. So that's what I would say. Most people spend way too much time in their shadow patterns and their victim patterns because they're simply not aware that there is a better way to go about living.
Hmm, that's beautiful. I have one more question for you today. And one of the things I always say is Dr. Wayne Dyer, these are his famous words, don't die with your music still in you. And to me,
Yeah.
from a gene key sense, that means your gift, right? And so my question for you is, how can more of us share the music that we came to share? How can we use the gene keys to step into our greatness without permission, without giving two shits what anybody else thinks? How can we lean into our gifts and begin to share the gifts that we came to share?
Yeah, that's such a deep and profound question. That's a good one to leave on, to depart on. So there is no simple answer to that because the journey to purpose and prosperity and fulfillment, as simple as it is, there are lots of layers and nuances. And one thing my mentor says is that as you voyage through life, as you voyage through the gene keys, it doesn't end with enlightenment.
Mm,
It continues with layers and layers of enlightened self-understanding. So one aspect of this is you just gotta have the intention that you want to know more about yourself, that you wanna live your purpose, that you wanna discover your purpose, that you don't wanna die with the music still inside you. It all begins with the intention, and that intention may bring you to voyage through the gene keys. Are the gene keys the only way to discover the music inside you?
mm,
No, it's not, but it's my favorite way to discover the music inside you. So if you feel called to the language that I'm sharing with you, to the wisdom of the gene keys, if there's something about just the phrase gene keys that piques your interest and curiosity, then I invite you to discover and explore what I believe without a doubt to be the most profound journey of my life, which may also be the most profound journey of your life. Again, it all starts with that simple intention. If you want to discover more about who you are, the purpose you're meant to embody and live, there's a lot of ways to go about it. But again, as a Gene Keys master guide, I'd say the Gene Keys are the best way to discover that on your own, or with a guide, or with other people who are on the journey together. Because it's one thing to go on this journey alone, it's more profound to go on this journey with others, as Violet can attest to, because I've shared insights with her. She shares insights with me. And because of that, there's this collective wisdom and empowerment that happens from the synergy between individuals who have realized their purpose. So that's one thing I'll leave on because I feel it emerging from what I feel called to share. It's one thing for one individual to realize their genius, to live their purpose, to not die with the music inside them. It's a whole nother collective and power dynamic for those individuals to come together and to make music together. And that is some of the voyage of the gene keys in my advocacy.
that's so beautiful, Justin. And I will just jump in and add that I firmly believe in the importance of having a guide, and not just any guide, but the way that you explain things speaks to my soul. You know, I've done a little reading and listening about gene keys, and it can be a little overwhelming. But having you as a guide has really put the pieces together for me. So, any of my friends who want to understand themselves on a deeper level, really want to do that self study, which is the golden ticket, the golden key to our self actualization, our pathway forward to our highest, greatest self. I highly recommend that you follow my guide and my friend, Justin. Justin, will you share with everyone where can they find you? How do they get a hold of you? You do these lives. I know you are always giving back to the community and offering these lives where you're doing, charts for other people. If anyone's interested in that or ready to just jump in and work with you in a bigger way, where can they find you?
Yeah. Well, I'll say I'm working on having one centralized link and location for people to find me at. But for now, you'll find the link to connect with me more in the comments or in the post of this video.
Awesome. Awesome. Justin, thank you so much. Your energy is so healing. just and just so full of wisdom. And I'm so grateful that I get to know you as a friend and that you're my guide on this Gene Key journey. And I'm excited for anyone that is working with you because transformation abounds. Thank you guys so much. Wishing you a blessed day.